Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the sixth installment of the Digital Teaching and Learning series. This is an initiative of the Office of the Dean of Teaching and Learning. We all know that the reading levels of our students are not that great. And we know this because they consistently place last in our international reading and literacy tests. We also know that although they are quite adept at online gaming and social networking, they're not so great at learning from reading materials online. So we need to be a little bit more deliberate in the way we design our materials and make them digestible and manageable and make them easy and very clear to understand. And it's with this in mind that we've asked Prof. Andre Vosloo and Dr. Dalene Vosloo to help us to develop our materials so that they are more manageable for our students. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Prof. Andre and Dr. Dalene Vosloo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. If I can just share my screen, don't mind for a moment. Can everybody see the screen?
We see you, we don't see the screen.
Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. So thank you for the opportunity to share some of this, and what I'm sharing here today is basically our own experience and made up from street smarts along the way. The study guide as a teaching device is something that we've come to try in a range of modules with some success, and maybe I'd just like to share some of these successes with you. Maybe the place to start is to just share with you my when we got disrupted by the COVID-19 breakdown of classes, and the email basically said, you've got your study guide, you've got your textbook, you will be fine. And that's quite an empowering thing for students to know that they've got everything they need on hand in order to achieve the outcomes of the module. So I've been working with study guides for probably close on 20 years, and it really started when a facilitator at my previous university, when we started talking about study guides, the question was, but what are you trying to achieve? And it was a really stupid thing in the first chapter of a comparative physiology textbook, which was a compositional analysis of the gases in air. And so the question really sort of went on, but what do they need to know? And we had this to and fro, and eventually I discovered that I was not being very clear on what I was expecting them to know. Was it the actual composition? Was it the percentage composition? Did they have to name the gases? Was it to the first decimal, the second decimal, that they need to interpret the information in relation to the design of gas exchange surfaces? What was I wanting them to take out of something as simple as the first table in their textbook? And the facilitator asked me, is the outcome or the aim of your module to confuse or to be unclear? And that has stayed with me. And every time that we engage with students, the question is really, am I being as clear as I can be in what I'm expecting of students? And am I being fair to them? am I expecting certain things from them that I have not made abundantly clear in my discussions with them in the material that I have provided for them. So this is all a bit confusing and a bit much to grasp at the moment. And maybe you're feeling sort of like the picture on the screen now, but we're really going to deconstruct the next little while into why I think study guides are useful, what a study guide could look like, and how you can frame your thought processes in terms of how to go into the process of creating a study guide for the first time, possibly. So what I'm sharing and things I'm going to be talking about are things that you're doing already. And I think the basic thing is really putting a mindfulness and a plan and a sort of progression of thoughts to what you are doing already. So this is nothing new. It's just sort of organizing your thoughts slightly more clearly on this. So it's not just me thinking that study guides are really good. There's good literature support for the functionality of good study guides. They give us a slightly more active learning process, moving away from a teacher-centered approach. So they're putting the power in the hands of the students. It encourages students to do reading. And this is, and you'll see in the way that we've constructed some of the outcomes, how we try to do this. It increases student involvement, highlights key information by students with a preview of expectations, and it gives them a good framework for to support the conceptual understanding. And I've put in a few references there, should you be interested in following up on this. So for me, the key is really the active learning and the preview of the expectations. So the students know at the start what they need to master from a certain section. And that's my agreement with them, and that is my contract with them in order to be as clear as possible in what I expect from them. And in the later part of the presentation, I'll talk to you about the conceptual understanding and how we can actually make this quite a big thing in these modules. So I've unpacked the assisted learning in a few points, and talking about each one of these points, and I'm giving you some examples of how we have gone about packaging information in a study guide to achieve each one of these aims. So I'm just giving you the list there, and I'll unpack the list as we go along. And as we get to the what side of things, is to orientate students. And I think students always have excuses that they didn't know things, and I think we need to err on the side of caution and not get into the to and fro of yes, yeah, maybe I didn't tell. No, we give them the information explicitly beforehand. And some of the things that, so the sort of that I'm showing you on the screen that we'll flip through are extracts from actual study guides that we use at the moment. So there's a little preamble on orientating the students to the module that they have registered for. You pull the notional hours from the college handbook. I think what was quite useful is for them to see how the notional hours are split. We explain what each of the notional hours are for, and we are very clear and pointed in terms of what the home study component is, and we get them to do a little math on, so if there are 55 hours of home study, how much time should they spend outside of contact on a weekly basis to engage with the material. And obviously this is scaled per level. At first year you would need much more of this, maybe at third year level it can be a little bit less. We will always need to talk about the P word when we try to orientate students. And plagiarism is really an issue. There are some things obviously scaled per module and per level that you might want more or less information on. You can include everything in terms of guiding the students about what plagiarism is, where they can find the policy of the university, etc., so that they understand the consequences of transgressions. You can put in your Turnitin information under a section like this as well. We talked to them about the rules of the module, and this is really like a repository that is school specific, maybe it's module specific, and it's things about how do we deal with you coming late for lectures, for instance, are we going to chase you out, things like that. So we have put actual study guides on the Moodle course page for this college effort. There are some word templates as well that you can use if you want to do this. So you can have a look at what the sort of things are that we put under the rules of the module. I think most of you have this already. We just, to be excessively clear, put all the contact details in here. We usually don't put in the other lecturers or the technical or the admin staff. We reserve that for the Moodle page, because this is quite dynamic and gives you fewer places to edit your study guide from year to year. We put in a little section on special needs, just to, especially for the first years, possibly to recap what they've done in the orientation week, because this module that we made this extract from is Biology 101. It runs in the first semester of the first year. So I think we're trying to work really hard towards orientating the students for life at university, and the disability support unit and their details are in there as well in the study guide, so that the students know that they have to do this before problems arise. We are very clear on assessment, how their final marks are going to be calculated, the 50% contribution of the exam versus how the other smaller components of the assessment is arranged, the percentage contribution of each of those. Be very clear on duly performed criteria, not that we're going to use it necessarily this year, and the subminimum criteria for the module, where they have to get 40% in the exam. And we explain this very, very clearly very early on. We put in the textbook references, all the readings that are required. We do a little extract from the college processes, the grievance procedure. It's a very useful document. We've put the full document on the Moodle course page, but we explicitly put in here how we're going to deal with mark corrections and mark changes, how we deal with medical certificates, and how we deal with fraudulent medical certificates. So these are sort of verbatim extracts from the college process document that we put in the study guide for a year-on-year basis. And then we go into how to use their study guide. And the study guide is really just a guide. It is not a set of notes that you can memorize at 10% for the exam. So it's not about a set of things that you need to memorize. It's a set of instructions to guide the students on how to deal with the material that we expect them to cover. We are very much working with icons in order to convert a really dense text work into something that is more digestible, more accessible. So the sort of icons that we use is a little book to indicate what the reading component is that they will have to do. Then we have the key learning outcomes for a particular section. We ask them to stop and revise, because, I mean, learning is continuous. You can't just treat every section of the work separate from whatever precedes them. And we have a sort of scaffolded progression of knowledge from first year to third year. And we really need to help them, because of their short-term memory problems, that they need to remember what they've done previously and apply that to any new work that we want them to cover. And what is very important, and this is what I'll cover at the latter end of the presentation as well, is why is this section of the work important for the module, for the content, and also for the degree. So we're really getting to know that, okay, we're dealing with, in this case, we're dealing with things like cell structure. There's a whole second year module that deals with that, and there's a whole third year module that deals with that. So the sooner they get to grips with this, obviously the better they're going to make the progress throughout their curriculum. The little ball that we have here is additional reading that we put in, and this is especially for students who are, and this is nice to have information. This is not critical for the outcomes of the course. So this is typically where the high-end students, we focus so much energy on students that are struggling, and we put in these links, especially for the higher-end students who might be bored with the sort of information that we try to put them, because they know it, they're comfortable with this, they want to go further, and we really try to provide them some information or links that they can follow in order to get more information about the application of a specific technique in terms of cancer diagnostics, for instance. We allow them to do some further exploration. We have in Biology 101 a specific icon for mastering biology. So we've brought into the management system that is associated with the textbooks. There are lots of really, really cool exercises and videos and figure walkthroughs and a whole range of ways to liven up the content for the students. So this is specific for this particular module. We give them specific activities, which is a little running man, and then we have self-evaluation steps for them. When they work through this, stop at some point and just check whether you know the stuff before you go on. We always have a caveat. I mean, like any guide, it is only a guide. It doesn't replace the textbook. It doesn't replace lectures. It doesn't replace the need to come to the lectures, tutorials, and practicals. It's really just a guide, and it's not a set of notes. It's really just it's in the form of questions and things that they have to be able to master. So we're not giving them the information. We're just telling them what to go and mine and how to go about mining that information. So after they've been through this, they should really know what the module is about and what we are going to expect from them. What is really useful in a study guide is that it allows you and it forces you to link the program outcomes and the module outcomes. So there is a program template for each of the qualifications. There is a module template for your specific module that you're working on. And it's really good to reflect on that a little bit, just to make sure that what was originally envisioned when the module was created is actually still being done. And I know we do handbook changes year on year, small percentage changes from year to year. And it's good to just benchmark whether what you're doing is actually still correct. So it's really what you're doing and how you construct this guide should support what the outcomes of the module should be. And then all of us do this. We break the content down, sort of 15, 20 chapters that the students have to work through, or 20 articles, or whatever the course content entails. We break it down into units. And these units are really important. It's sort of discrete, accessible, digestible chunks of information. Each one associated with a specific literature source, each one associated with a series of outcomes that will have to be achieved by the students. And these units, and we call them study units, are really important because they immediately form the basis of how your timetable is going to be constructed, how many weeks are going to be spent on each one of those topics. And these study unit headings also become the section headings of your Moodle page. And so the students immediately have an organized set of information. And they know what the study units are. They know where they fit in on the timetable, how many weeks are going to be spent on each of them. And they know exactly when they scroll through the Moodle course page, where to find the information associated with that. And this is really critical to give a sense of coherence in the module and allow the students to partition information to the appropriate section of the module that you are covering. We very mindful about allocating home study hours. So in the notional study hours, the home study component is abundantly clear. But of course, some study units are bigger than others. And it contains more information and more complexity, etc. So it's really about this little clock that we put on each one of the study units. There's a book icon that refers the students to what the reading is. And there's a little icon here that shows them how much home study they have to do to master the outcomes in excess of contact periods for tutorials and lectures and practicals. And we're very clear after they have read this particular section of work, what they need to pull out of that. And then I'll expand on this a little bit later on. So this is just about guiding them in terms of the scope of the work and the amount of time that they would need to spend on this particular study unit. It's important that the study guide highlights the important concepts and improves the students' engagement and comprehension of those particular aspects. So this is just an extract from our first year module. So what we are doing, one of the tools that we use are backlinks. So here again, the students get into a rhythm of seeing, okay, well, this is what I need to read. This is the section, this is the chapter. When I'm done with this, I should know all of these little things that I've come up here. And then we just do a backlink and say, okay, well, this section really builds on previous sections. So in the previous sections, you need to do this and this and this and this. And this is now becoming really important, because if you don't know this, then you're gonna struggle to deal with the content that is coming. So it's really just making that backlink to previous information. And of course, this backlink doesn't have to be to previous work in the module. It can be to complete previous module or the outcomes or of a section of a previous module. So this is really important that we contextualize the information for students in this way. We use forward links. So every once in a while, we'd put in an icon of some design and telling the students, well, this is really important that you know this, because in the next section, we're going to deal with this in more detail. So this is the basics, and we're going to expand on this in a future section. The third tool that we use within the study guide are exercises. So this little example here is just a semi-populated graphic, and ideally in a lecture situation or a tutorial situation, this can be the start of a good discussion, and the students will have to be engaged in the lecture or the tutorial in order to successfully complete the labeling and the process that we're trying to get them to engage with here. What's very important is that we have transitioned these exercises. Yes, they are in the study guide, but we've transitioned these to the Moodle course pages, and it's set up as an assignment or a quiz, and then obviously that automates the marking to a very large extent and gives the students immediate feedback on whether they've actually grasped what the concept is all about. We use case studies for them to engage with. The first exercise here is a very specific example of pollution levels in the Ngeni River. And the second example, this tutorial exercise here is really about the sort of partition coefficients and the clearance rates of specific toxicants, and we give them the data, they can do the calculations, and they really have to be on their game. They have to know the mechanics of the process. They have to infer from the results that they're getting what the biological consequences of that particular calculation would entail. This is really actively engaging them and helping them to understand with a real life example the process slightly better. The sort of improved metacognition is really about enabling and empowering the students to check whether they have got the work. Now, fortunately, with the Moodle course page and where the LMS is set up, we can do that in a slightly more automated manner. To send the students to a specific exercise, the exercise can be linked to the Moodle course page where they can find a little small assessment that'll allow them to just check whether they know it. It's not for marks, it's really just a formative thing for them. They don't have to tell anybody that they failed. They will know immediately that they failed, and they can retry it and recognize where their weak points are. Because we're using mastering biology, there are options for adaptive follow-up assessments. So based on the result the students are getting, they get an additional 3 or 4 questions that will probe a specific area that they might need some more attention on. So linking this component of the study guide with the learning management system is really powerful in order to just force the students to check their own progress, and based on that, maybe go for another iteration of engaging with the material. So what we've done in this little section, there are specific things that we want them to do. So they have to attempt the quiz that we put on the Moodle course page. We've given them out links to additional assessment that they can do. And there's a practice test that is constructed in the Mastering Biology section of this, or you can just do a quiz on the Moodle course page in order to force them, give them the opportunity to engage with the material and see whether they actually know this or not. Doesn't make part of the class mark, but it gives them a good idea of whether they've mastered the outcomes of this particular section. The last thing that we think a study guide should have is to help the students think about what they are reading when we send them to read something. So if somebody sends me to read the paper, and I don't know what I have to pull out of there, it's actually quite confusing. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of information. And a chapter in a textbook is really dense. So what do we want them to pull out of there? And in this sense, I'm just going back to the same little example here. We send them to a particular chapter. How many home study hours is required? After they've done this, what should you know? And explain terms and concepts, the different endpoints to determine this, those factors that affect toxicity. So immediately they know when they access the chapter that this is the information that they need to look for. This is what they need to pull out, because this is what is important in terms of mastering the outcomes of this module. These are linked to action verbs. And immediately when you start using action verbs, you start looking at your assessment criteria for this particular section of the work. Immediately the students know to what depth they need to do this. So in first year modules, it would be very much lower Bloom's taxonomy level outcomes, like name these things or list these things. But then when you get to second and third year modules, you can up the stakes here in a typical Bloom's taxonomy manner, moving up to applications and analysis, and each one of these have specific action verbs, and you can use these in your outcomes for the section to guide the students in terms of to what depth they need to mine the section of work that you've given them in order to master the outcomes that you want for them to have. I'll expand on this a little bit later as well. Immediately when you get to this point where you start putting action verbs, when you define the scope firstly, and you define the depth to which they need to mine the information, you're putting yourself in a really good spot in order to create assessments later on. You spend a lot of time with this beforehand, but creating an assessment is actually as easy as going back into the study guide. What do I need them to know? And then you assess those particular outcomes that you've given them. So as a thought process, and this is really where the how component comes in, is really a little workflow in order to assist you in just looking at your module outcomes. And all of you you know this. Your modules have outcomes that they have to achieve. Your work is probably already broken down into study units. You have the literature that is required to master each of those study units. And your study units are actively feeding into your module outcomes. So there's a direct link between what the module is supposed to develop and how each of the study units contributes to the larger outcomes of the particular module. Then constructing your activities to help the students master the outcomes. And then obviously when you link this to LMS, it becomes an automated process rather than a sort of standalone exercise. So what we've seen, and I mean, this is personal experience coming into play here, is that our students know what they need to know. We are very clear. We are very explicit in this. This is what you need to know. This is the scope of what we require from you. And this is the depth. And this is where the Bloom's taxonomy comes in really powerfully in order to explain how deeply each one of those little sections will have to be mined by the students. We get students who get sick and they still keep up. When they see that they've missed a week worth of lectures because they were ill, They know what work was covered, and they know what they need to do in order to not fall behind the other students. Students have a better understanding of the context of the content that we want to get across, because we've sort of frameworked it for them in terms of why this is important, what this builds on, what this is going to lead into in later parts of the module or the qualification. It's easy to get equivalency in common modules. The expectations across campuses sometimes, if you run common modules, might have things slightly easier or slightly more difficult or slightly bigger or slightly smaller in one campus compared to the other. So evening that out is something that a study guide is really, really powerful tool in order to do your quality assurance in common modules that run across different campuses, presented by different people with different experience. Exactly what the examples are, obviously, are up to people's expertise and their interest and their background, but the core outcome will be delivered, albeit sometimes with different examples. If you don't want to do handover to new staff or replace some staff, you want to go on sabbatical, you give them a study guide, and they will know exactly what the material is that has to be covered, what the outcomes are of the module, not of me. This is the outcomes of the module. And they need to know what has to be done in order to achieve those particular outcomes. The maintenance of the year-on-year scope, standards and expectations is a point that I put in there because I've seen us become more proficient, they know more, they find things so interesting that the module sort of inflates gently over time, because the lecturer just becomes more and more experienced at sharing their information. So the model becomes bloated. But if you have a study guide, you will know what to focus on and what the core expectations for that module is. Constructing assessments, and I think this is, as a lazy lecturer, this is probably the biggest benefit. You put in a lot of work to make the study guide. And what is in it for you? Yes, the students benefit massively because they know what to do, what to know, how to mine the information. But the biggest benefit for me is that when I need to construct an assessment, I can just go into the study guide and say, well, I need them to know this, but I want to test a high order outcome, so I'm going to link it with that outcome in that different study unit, and I'll combine these two as a larger question. So obviously the lower level things that they need to know, and then obviously if your outcome is phrased in the same way, you can just copy and paste it. Basically, you rephrase it, you can link it with another one, or you can combine different outcomes to form a larger synthesis type of question. The linkages and scaffolding of information is really critical. And I think our students are in a position where they see each module as a little unit. You do it, you forget it, and you move on to something new. But no, we need to break down these barriers between modules, and the study guide is a really powerful tool to do that. Because what we're doing here, and this is an example of one of the modules that we're doing in Biology 101. So this section that we're doing here is linking to a whole new module, and that whole module is linking to several other modules. So the information that they learn is not sort of packaged in a little corner in a module somewhere, never to be used again. No, I mean, we're working in a holistic manner in order to develop the students to tackle across modules things of increasing complexity as we work through level 1, level 2, level 3, and we're expecting increasing Bloom's taxonomy levels of outcomes or skills. And obviously when your module study guide for Biology 101 speaks to what is going to come in subsequent modules, we benchmark that properly, and the next module study guide speaks to what the students need to bring from Biology 101, then we force the students to make that connection between modules, and we force them to see the increasing complexity that we're trying to get across to them, which is all really in the design of our whole curriculum. But I think the students lose it. And I think if we have a study guide that can make these linkages for them, I think we might benefit the students and ourselves and the quality of our students eventually quite significantly. So this is the end of what I want to share with you. So it was really about what a study guide is and what it entails, the sort of information that you can package in there to make the lives for the students slightly easier and to make the life for yourself slightly easier as well. Just to some personal experiences is maybe to not try to do a study guide this afternoon. I think you should set yourself a realistic target of working on this over a few semesters and trying something small, see what works, embellish that. If you do something in the study guide that doesn't work, you improve on it the next year. So this is not something that you do in one sitting and then it's done forever. The textbook is going to change and the outcomes might be slightly amended if your material that you're presenting from is changing. Work on 1 or 2 sections a year, and you can always tell your academic leader that you are going to expand this, and every year you have something really funky to report in your teaching and learning aspect because you developed a new section of the module, and in a year or 2 or 3 you'll have a really functional module study guide that will really beneficiate the students. I would urge you that if you want to go this route, if you're starting now, is to really embed what you are doing in the learning management system. So make the linkages to Moodle so that your Moodle page and your study guide becomes an integrated unit where some of the things are more easily dealt with in the Moodle course page, the sort of quick assessments and the progression of the students to check whether they know the work, the self-assessments are easily done on there, but make those linkages very clear and locked into your study guide so that there's no clarity, no fuzziness in terms of what you expect from the students. So if you are interested in pursuing something like this, on the Moodle course page for this effort by the college, we have uploaded some of the study guides that we're using currently as PDFs so that you can see what it entails. And we have converted those to sort of Word templates. So if you're interested in hitting the ground running and working from something that is already in Word, then you are more than welcome to access those and make it your own, and delete and edit and revise and change and add as you see fit in order to make it work for you, because this is really there's no one size fits all. Your module will require specific outcomes, specific tasks, and specific way of doing things that might not necessarily work in a different module. And I would really urge you, if you have questions about this, you're more than welcome to contact myself or Dalene, and we will help you through this as much as you possibly can if you find this useful at all. And from our own experience, we can say it helps. And the fact that we can email students at the start of disruptions or the start of a COVID-19 crisis and tell them that you've got the study guide, you've got the textbook, you're going to be fine, I think is a good testament to the usefulness of a good study guide. So that's all I have from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Does anyone have any questions? We can take a few questions before we conclude. We did have a request from Hallam. If you could please put the PowerPoint presentation on the Moodle page as well.
Of course, I'll do that.
Okay. Thank you. Doesn't seem to be any other questions.
I have a question. Can I ask, please?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's quite simplified. In fact, I have the privilege of seeing what you've done with the Biology 101 platform, and I appreciate the fact that you're using learning biology. I had requested if it's possible to secure learning genetics for my module and implement all of the beautiful strategies that you've implemented. But I don't know how to go about getting the resource for my module. Can you please guide me?
Yes, so I mean, we trawl the internet for resources. I mean, the purpose of the study guide, and I think we need to make a separation here. The study guide is really to help the students get through the textbook and to engage with the textbook and to work with the textbook. The other really cool resources are there to sort of supplement in a blended manner any of the other outcomes that we want to achieve. So the core purpose of the study guide is to help the students, and I think we've heard it previously, the students are struggling to read, and I think if they hit a little hurdle to reading, they will stop. So if we can assist them in engaging with the textbook material, I think that's very good. I think the blended content that we have on the learning management system is a completely different aspect. And I think the purpose of that effort that we put in on the Moodle course pages is slightly different, is to sort of enhance what the core outcomes of the module would be, maybe visualize some difficult processes slightly better. But the core thing here is that the study guide is aimed at assisting the students to access what at level 1 they might perceive as a very dense piece of reading that we're trying to give them. I'm not sure if that would answer your question. So if it's about the study guide, it's really guided by the material that you want them to cover. If it is about the blended resources, then I mean you trawl YouTube videos and animated graphics in order to get the students to sort of conceptually understand something slightly better, but then they have to go back and link that to what is in the textbook.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Prof. Delia?
Yes, I want to thank Dalene and Andre for the efforts in putting this training session together. I really appreciate it. But just to say, well, I'm the Dean and the head of Mathematics, Statistics and Computer Science, which is quite, I think, different to maybe the kind of study guides that we would have in biology, and that we generally don't have a textbook. We demonstrate, we give them exercises. So for us, not to be able to stand in front of a class is really difficult. And we are going to use the week coming up of dry run. Even it will be ever evolving if we do have a study guide. At the beginning of the year, we give them a plan for the year, which is sort of a course information sheet. And I think what I take away from your lovely presentation is maybe we need to enrich that, and we'll have to amend it, but it will be sort of a living document because we're learning as we're going ahead. Because to teach mathematics, when you don't have your usual resources, when you're standing up in front of the class, is quite something. So I think for us, we've just had a whole morning session. It's quite a learning curve. And as you said, it's not something you're going to make quickly and make overnight. So it is going to be quite interesting for us. But thank you for your presentation. It's certainly given us some food for thought. But I do not see how we could do it so easily, by the way, in disciplines. But we do what we can, and it's discipline specific. We'll talk within our groupings and see how best we can do it. And I think it's something which, whatever we put down, it will change in 2 weeks' time as we're evolving and learning to cope. Thank
you very much, Delia. I think this is a really critical. So I hope prescriptive. I think I tried to be clear that this is what works for us, and something else will work for a different module with different content. and different context and different linkages between modules and content. So this is really just, I mean, I try to make it clear, this has been our experience. And I fully realize that it can be very challenging and very different for other modules and other disciplines as well. I think that is core. It has to work for you. Thank you very much.
Shakira, you had your hand up.
Hi, Andre, it's Shakira.
Hi, Shakira.
Thanks for a very, very informative presentation. I'm really looking forward to starting mine, not this afternoon, but certainly, yeah. Two parts to my question. How long have you been using the study guide? So like, when was the first time you implemented it? And have you had any feedback from the students, say on the evaluation platforms? Are they receiving it well? Thank you.
Yes, I've been using this for say close on 20 years. Firstly, because I was forced to, because the university where I was at put their foot on the path of developing study guides. So I was a slow buyer in, but I'm a firm convert at the moment. As to the sort of empirical usefulness, obviously it's an ethical conundrum trying to give the study guide to half the class and not to the other half. So in terms of the benefits to performance, I think that's very difficult to quantify. We do get very positive comments from the students. They find it very useful. And the students who actively engage with this, the study guide becomes like this living thing that they carry with them. It's there for their notes. And it becomes all frumpled by the end of the semester because they use it every single day, and they know exactly what is important. So from the student perspective, and I don't know, maybe Dalene can add her feelings about this as well. But I found it that the good students really use this, and they really appreciate the effort that goes into this because they know exactly what they need to know. And I think that's a very clear communication from our side.
Yeah, if I can just add to that. Sorry, I was a bit late for the meeting. I was stuck in a teaching and learning meeting. So basically, we have mixed feelings from students as well. The students who don't want to work on their own are criticizing us for not giving them notes that they can learn from. But the students who want to start asking them whether they have engaged and how they engage with the study guide, I think they realize that it also helps them to understand concepts. I actively, for example, use the study guide in some of my tutorials for exam prep and force them to look at those outcomes. And they have to develop questions from, am I muted? They have to develop questions from those outcomes so that they can see that how those outcomes fit to the content, fit to whatever they'll be assessed on. And then it seems like a light going on, and they work on those, or work actively with those studies.
Belwa.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for a very encouraging presentation. I was just in my mind, I thought that after today's session, I'll probably hit the ground running, to try and develop one for this emergency remote teaching process that we're doing now. But then you said, well, it takes several semesters, to do that. So it stopped me dead in my tracks. So I'm just looking for any hints that can probably that can assist one to address the situation that we are faced with now. Is there any idea, any advice you could give? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, apparently everybody's got so much time now, just sitting at home doing nothing, that maybe you can actually do it very, very quickly. That seems to be what everybody thinks, is that we're just sort of lolling around doing absolutely nothing at the moment. I think I'm in two minds. I mean, it is a time-consuming process to get it right. But if I have to think back to my first study guide, it was really just sort of conceptually penning out what would be very important for the students to know. And that's maybe the first place to start, is to really, in your mind, make an agreement with the students. Well, if you know this, then I would be satisfied that you've mastered the outcomes of this module. And to leave the expansion and the embellishment and the prettifying and all these other things for a later stage. And I think that would already be a massive benefit for the students, just to get that sort of certainty in their minds, or sort of calmness in their minds, that, okay, I need to know this, this, and this, and this. Do I know this? Yes, I know it. I'm fine. Because I think the uncertainty in students' minds is adding to a lot of anxiety for them in exam time, in their preparations, etc., etc. And I think at some point they just feel like they want to give up because they don't know if they are well enough prepared. So just even starting with making a list of what the core things, the core concepts are that the students need to take out of your module is a brilliant start. And I think that is something that can be accomplished in a relatively short timeline and shared with the students as a sort of 1-pager or a 2-pager. And of course, that would form the basis of what you develop further in terms of a more comprehensive guide to the students. Dalene, do you have it?
Yeah, I think you don't have to chronologically start with page 1 and end with page 70 of the study guide. You can start with what you need to teach the students now. And just with your, for example, try the dry run next week and say, okay, what do I want the students to get from this dry run? What are we wanting to achieve for this dry run? Pen those down as the outcomes for the dry run. Put it up on your Moodle section for that week as a little block of text. Say, after this week, we want to gain the following, or after this week, we want you to know the following, just as a basic guideline for them, so that they know what to expect. And then after all, after they've completed the whole module, coming back from week to week, if they want to revise certain section, just to remind them, okay, yes, this is what we wanted to achieve in this week or that week. And it might change from week to week. It's going to be different for different modules. It's going to be completely different from the dry run, for example, from when you start actually teaching. But that's the start of your study guide already. And then if you want to use that to put something on paper for next year or the year after, then that's your basis that you start from. I think not one of our study guides started with what they look like now. They start with something really basic, and then each year you add on to them. I have done, after almost 10 years of teaching, I've completely redone some of my study guides a year or two ago, and I didn't do all of them. I started with, okay, this year we're going to revise study unit 5, and next year we're going to do 6 and 7 and 8, for example. But you have to start somewhere. You can't think that you're going to start writing on page 1. It's a piece of work that evolves, if that can be.
Thank you very much for that. At least the first thing is to calm the students, at least to as you have said, because I had a session this morning with sense the anxiety in them, you know, and they're already thinking about whether they're going to complete the degree or not, you know. So I think that what you've mentioned is very, very, very important. Thank you for that.
Thank you. There doesn't seem to be any other questions or hands up. No. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think from my side, just and I think this last question was probably the most important of the whole lot, and that's to start small and to start in a focused manner. And I think if you take from this presentation that if you work mindfully at this, you are sort of slowly making progress towards a larger, more comprehensive product. But starting small is the way to go. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Prof. Andre and Dalene. Thank you for your time and your effort. We really appreciate it. And I'm sure the staff have really gained a lot from this presentation. It was short and powerful, and everyone can access the content on the ERT module, as we said. I think Jill has something to say here. She says she has no questions, but just a big thank you. It's been inspiring. I think everyone feels the same way. Thank you so much. And thanks to all the attendees as well. This will be recorded and uploaded onto the teaching and learning page. It has been recorded actually, and will be uploaded onto the teaching and learning page of the college. And so you can access this there as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon and stay safe. Bye.